Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the second season of the show, The Last of Us. There will be spoilers, so leave if you are scared of those, or stay, it's up to you. Fun fact. The game was originally going to have a section where Ellie goes to Scar Island, but they had to cut it out and made room for it in the show in the final episode of this season. This season came out in 2025 and stars Bella Ramsey, Isabella Merced, and Pedro Pascal, and was created by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The Last of Us Season 2 sees Ellie and Joel getting used to life in Jackson after Joel saved Ellie at the end of Season 1 by killing some doctors. What Ellie doesn't know is that Joel killed everyone in the hospital, which in turn has created an enemy by the name of Abby that is out to get Joel no matter what. Abby kills Joel, and Ellie goes on a mission to find her so that she can get revenge. The Last of Us is an apocalyptic show based on a video game. It has similar vibes to Fallout, All of Us Are Dead, or Attack on Titan. So I just want to say that I have played The Last of Us, the game, actually finished it right before this season started. So my perspective on things is from one who has played the games, but don't worry, I will not spoil what happens in the game past what we see in the show. But I may mention stuff that they left out that I know probably would not be added later because it just wouldn't make sense. The games themselves are very fun to play, and part 2 is interesting and long, but focuses heavily on Ellie and Abby. I was excited for the show and nervous, mainly because the structure was going to be different, going from season 1, which had us, going from city to city on this journey, to season 2 and part 2 of the game, where we're on a journey to hunt this one person and using this person's friends to find out where she is. The show's performances are great. If I had an Emmy for all of them, I would hand them out to the entire cast, but I will say some of the story decisions were interesting. I'm okay with changes and adaptations, but I think the thing that makes people like me who might have played the game or read the book that is being adapted feel irritated is when they change stuff that sets up something in the future or messes up the characterization of what the character was like in the source material. With that being said, let's dive a little deeper into the season, which took us on a city tour of Seattle. The season for me started off strong, and towards the end, they made some changes that I was questioning, but I wanted to see how it was all going to play out. One thing I love that they did was add these Easter eggs for people who played the game. Obviously, this show is adapted from a video game, so we see the story, but they added more callbacks to the gameplay, which I love. We see the stealth, listening to figure out how many enemies are in a building, bottle throwing as a distraction, knife attacks, rain, which is very important in Seattle, the dog on the employee appreciation board in episode 1, climbing up things, Abby's dreams of her dad, and the guitar scenes, to name a few. These are things that I felt non-gamers would just see and just, keep moving on, but it's nice for the game players to see how that translated into live action. I think the story is one of the easiest aspects to adapt, but the actual gameplay is the hardest because a lot of the stuff might not seem natural, or in the game, it just takes a long time, but it was nice to see them take some time and add that into the show. There's one thing from the game I wish they had cut down on: the guitar scenes. In the game and the show, both of those were the bane of my existence. In the game, you are forced to play, and I want to keep on with the mission, and it doesn't make any sense that when you are in an unfamiliar area, have no clue where the infected are, and don't know the details of whatever fighting is going on, that you decide to sit down and play a guitar. When I saw that in the show, I was so irritated because I'm like, that would draw so much attention, and the situation itself is already very high tension. In the scenes of the first episode where they show it in, the creator says something about the fans loving the guitar in the game, and I was like, who said that? It's not something that would ever make me hate the overall product, but I just needed to tell everyone watching my dislike for the abundance of guitar scenes that are in the game as well as the TV show. The show was filled with some great performances all around. Ellie, Joel, Tommy, and Maria return, and this season introduces us to Abby's crew, who are great, Gail and Isaac, who have great performances. We also meet Dina and Jesse. Ellie, who is played by Bella Ramsey, gets a lot of hate from people online for some reason because they don't like her as Ellie, but I honestly think she's perfect for the job and does a great job of showing the angst while growing up, finding yourself and what you want, and dealing with loss. Abby, who is the one that causes Ellie so much pain this season, is played by Caitlin Dever, who I think is a phenomenal actress, who I was very excited for, and I will say she kills the performance of Abby, really showcasing the anger. But after playing the game, I was shocked that she didn't have the look of the character since it came from a game and viewers can look up how Abby looks in the game, which she looks like a beast. She's bigger and stronger than Ellie, which to me seemed like she would have been played by someone like Katie O'Brien. While it took me a minute to get past that, I do think that the rest of her crew was cast perfectly, and I'm glad that they kept Jeffrey Wright as Isaac. To be completely honest, I think some of the performances really saved some of the scenes from being a complete wreck due to the pace and how the story was written in some parts. The infected play a huge part in the world that this show is set in because of how dangerous they are. I'm glad this season that, they show there are more stages than just the normal infected and the clickers and the bloaters when we see the stalkers. Funny enough, in the game, I feel like when you play as Ellie, the stalkers don't really do much, and I often just sprint it past them really fast because I did not have time to really deal with that in my mind. But not in the show. I'm glad they introduced them and explained a little bit about where they fit in the timeline of an infected person. We see the normal groups as well, and even come across a bloater who gives Tommy a run for his money. I must highlight that the bloater scene perfectly captures the stress you feel in the game while playing, against a bloater. I felt in the season one, they really didn't capture how stressed and horrified you are when you're playing the game, but that scene really did and showed how difficult they are to kill. While I was happy from the intro of the Stalkers, I wish the show would not only focus on the big groups of infected, but also show how the small groups are also stressful. Like we have the siege on Jackson and the attack with Abby and the train station, which show that the situation is stressful, but it also seems like it's mostly because of the sheer number of infected. In the game, I do feel like they do a better job of showing how, yes, the big group can be frightening, but a pack of 4 clickers can also be very stressful too. I think about this when they're in the subway scene because they showed so many infected going after Ellie and Dina. But in the game, I remember there being 4 clickers, but they're so hard to kill because if you shoot, you alert the others and they move so fast. So you have to do it with stealth, which makes it more difficult, on top of the fact that there are also WLF soldiers in the subway station with you. I think the show could have done a better job this season showing how there's not always a lot of infected, but the amount is not always the scary part. Overall, I feel like there are minimal scenes with the infected, and it made me wonder if they forgot that this show was one that dealt with human threats as well as zombie ones. I would have loved to see more infected and how Ellie had to deal with that on her journey, and if there were more types of infected, but it seems like with how fast they were moving, they cut it out because they didn't think it was important. I know the drama is interesting as well, but I wish they gave more time to showcase the infected throughout the season, and it also could have gave more time to show how Ellie deals with them on her journey. It was such an odd choice to add these storylines that were tied in with homophobia and give them so much attention. Seth speaks about traditional values and then apologizes later, and that's where his storyline should have ended. I hate when shows or movies feel the need to give people some type of redemption arc after being such an awful person. Sometimes it makes sense, but sometimes I think it's better to let people hate that character and not bring them up again. You can show forgiveness is important with the person who has done something that is less offensive because it is important, but I think it's ridiculous for the person who is being attacked to constantly have to be the bigger person and forgive when they always shouldn't. And in that case, I don't think Ellie should have had to deal with that. In the flashback episode, Joel has some undertones of homophobia after he catches Ellie with a girl, and that was shocking to me because game Joel would never, and show Joel never showed any inclination that that would be a problem either. It pisses me off more because they then changed the storyline to be that Ellie was mad at him because of how he reacted, and their final speech was in regards to that, and then she asked him about what happened at the hospital at the end of episode 6. This was one of the biggest changes I think that pissed me off because in the game, Ellie figures out what happened at the hospital and confronts Joel about it, and that's why she is mad, and that makes more sense because it ties into the overall Abby versus Ellie story, lets the person playing know that Ellie knew about what Joel did, which was a big question I had while I was playing, and leans more into this idea that it's just a cycle of violence that will just keep going and going, but also lets you know, as you know, the person watching these scenes, that Ellie is capable of finding out this information on her own. In the game, she's mad at him for a while, like 2 years, and I think, it's something that she really has to come to terms with. In episode 6, they showed the last convo from her and Joel, and in the game, that scene was at the very end of the game, which was a nice way to wrap up the game. And while it does deliver an emotional punch in the show, I think it would have been better, like it was in the game, to really wrap things up. The way the show handled it made me feel like they forgot how much the story was loved, and part of that is how it all connected. In the show, adding this homophobia storyline makes it seem like they were just trying to be different from the game, and I don't think it worked, and it also didn't seem like it played any importance. Overall, there were pacing issues, which really comes down to the fact that 7 episodes were not enough to tell this story. The show adds stuff in as well that really makes you question why they decided to do 7 episodes. And when they try to show how much time has passed in the show, it starts getting a little confusing because you're just trying to keep up. I think they could have omitted Isaac's storyline and saved it for Abby's season since he connects more with her. If they wanted to give a backstory on something, it should have been why the Scars and WLF are fighting in the first place. Ellie going to Scar Island was not necessary and felt like a waste. Like, great, you want to show it, but with the way that you were rushing through stuff, maybe now isn't the time. There are too many guitar scenes that aren't really exclusive to the show. Adding Eugene's story to me felt like a waste because there could have been other things added, like what Tommy was doing or what Jesse was doing, because that whole storyline seemed like a side mission that didn't need to be in the story, because it was used to tie back into why Ellie was mad at Joel when they should have just kept it that she was mad at him because of Joel killing the doctors and lies to her, which would further tie into Abby's role, the tension between Joel and Ellie, and further show how the events at the end of the season prior wasn't something that everyone besides Abby just got over. Like, it was an issue for a lot of people outside of Abby. I love Catherine O'Hara and thought she did fantastically, but the inclusion of Gail with the Eugene storyline just ate away at time that could have gone to more Infected or even Hillcrest. The beginning of the series was paced well, but then it started moving very fast, and some of the skips seemed like a mess. For example, the Nora scene jumped from Dina getting shot basically to Ellie chasing Nora and failed to even hint at how hard it is to get into that hospital. I will say that I love them adding Ellie cutting herself so that the bite looks less like a bite. Like, she can cover up the one on an arm with a tattoo and, burning herself, but that's not always an option. It's also not a great option. So showing her being creative was a cool way to show she understands how people would react and is protecting herself. I think it was great to mix Manny and Jordan in the show because Jordan didn't seem that relevant in the game besides someone you just hate. I'm glad that they kept Shimmer alive because while Shimmer's death in the game helped you understand that Seattle is filled with traps and is truly the unknown, I still want the horse alive. I do like that they added frozen infected because it shows that while the infected can live for a long time, they can be stopped by the seasons. Some changes like these are good to help further explain things and the world that they live in, which I'm glad the show decided to display. While I did feel like the part leading up to the chase was rushed, the actual chase with Nora was such a good scene and really reminded me of the game in the most positive of ways. I love the line delivery from Tati Gabriel where she says she dreams of Joel and he got what he deserved. The chase was intense, and I love the realization that Ellie was immune and her trying to be like, well, Joel killed Abby's dad is like a gotcha. And Ellie being like, I know, which is like supposed to be a shock. While I was mad that they skipped over Ellie fighting her way through the hospital to get to Nora, once she got to Nora, that scene was just really intense, and they perfectly captured how Ellie had to choose to fight the other WLF in this hospital or continuing chasing Nora because Nora was a little track star. At the end of the episodes, there are these little behind the scene discussions with the writers and creators, and it's always interesting to see the reasoning behind changes from the game. And then I think about whether they worked or not. There were some things that were interesting, like them saying they gave Jesse more of a presence in the last episode, because something along the lines of them having, like flesh out more of these side character stories, which I don't really agree with because I didn't actually need to learn that much more about him. And all it did was make him slightly more unlikable because he was being very rude. I am glad they introduced the scars, but I think it would have been way cooler to have them in the scene where Dina gets shot as their intro. Because in the game, it feels like they come out of nowhere and you don't know who they are, but you know that they aren't WLF and they just shot you. I think showing all the scars traveling and then the dead scars killed by the WLF might have made people want to have sympathy, and I prefer in the game how essentially both groups suck, and if you aren't one of them, they will most likely kill you or attempt to. I also felt like this scene made them look weak, which I think they rectified because the scars might not use guns, but they are stealthy and have good aim with a bow and arrow. Like I said earlier, I would have loved an explanation on the beef or even a visual between, scars and WLF. They also should not have cut out the spores in season one, only for them to bring them up in season two. The mask seemed to be the reason why they cut them out, in season one, because they said something about like acting behind a mask is boring. But the mask to me just show how dangerous it is, and it seemed inefficient to avoid spores every time someone in that world encounters them instead of having the mask so that you can get into the room that has them and finish whatever you're doing. Since they bring it up this season, they rush to explain it, but it feels like a huge oversight in season one. In the end of the season, Dina seems to judge Ellie, and I was like, well, that would make more sense if she wasn't encouraging her to do murder the entire season for revenge. But then she does, and Dina is now having a moral dilemma. I prefer her to be more supportive of Ellie and not so judgmental, but that goes more into Ellie's character, which I will discuss in a moment. In the game, Ellie's character has much more autonomy and really is shown to be able to handle her own, but also form her own thoughts, which I didn't think was shown this season. In the game, she is doing this revenge stuff on her own volition, and in the show, we hear this whole backstory from Dina to help push her, and then more encouragement from her later to push her to follow through with this revenge plan. I think if you are going to do this, you need to be sure. And that was one thing I loved about Ellie in the game, that she was holding her own and really didn't need much help. I think the show forgot that they showed us how she trained with Pedro in season one, but also that she trained with Joel, so she isn't dumb. I think one of the worst instances where I realized they were stripping her of her autonomy is when Jesse saved them, because it makes it look like Ellie needs a man to save her and she can't handle her own, which should not be a thing. In the game, it's actually her who saves Jesse in Hillcrest, which they left out completely. I don't think she hit any of the stalkers when, they were dealing with that scene and Jesse ends up coming to save them. And that's just not the way that they portray Ellie in the game, and it's a huge disappointment in the show. It's like they took every scene that showed how much of a badass she was and probably took out 90% of those and then said, well, she's immune to spores and bites, which was harped on in season one for not being enough to survive. After Joel dies, I would have preferred her to be more serious and go on this journey and to show us that she can handle herself, by herself and how smart she is. She may not be a huge, daunting figure, but she's small, so she's good at hiding and pretty quick and good with weapons. The way that they show Ellie in this show is just weak. She needs constant help and encouragement, and I think it makes her character seem dull because she is on this mission for revenge. If she has no confidence that she can complete it or is unsure that she should be doing it, why would she even continue on this mission? I think Bella is doing a great job with the character for whatever she's given, but I do think that they need to have her be more assertive and make us feel like she wants this revenge and that she can do it, whether it's right or wrong. Mel dying by accident is a change that I hate to see because I think the way they handle it in the game is better. I think in the current world some of us live in, we may freeze like Mel did because we don't know what to do. In the game, she attacks Ellie with a knife, and after Ellie kills Owen, and Ellie stabs her in the neck in self defense and kills her, and then opens her jacket to find out that she's pregnant, which was a better scenario to me and played a part in Ellie's development because the baby may have seemed to remind her of Dina, but it was also a great reminder to show that Mel wasn't weak. Behind the scenes, they mentioned they changed the scene to an accident to show how she's like collateral damage or something about her not, intending to be in this situation, which to me made me think they were trying to say that she was like an innocent life. But Mel was an active participant in Joel's death by subduing Dina, whether she agreed with it or not. The way she dies in the game feels more fitting because they are in a war where it's killed or be killed. And yeah, she's pregnant. She would and should be fighting for her baby and her own life, not just standing there and then getting accidentally killed because she's pregnant and that doesn't mean that she's weak. I think her being more aggressive shows that she wants to fight for her life, but further drives home that the cycle of violence just never ends, and it's a huge realization for Ellie once she figures out that she is pregnant, even if it was self-defense. I'm not hoping for more and more death in the show, but I think that's what drives home that the cycle just keeps going and going. Also in the game, Ellie drops her map, which lets Abby know where they are, which wasn't mentioned here, and they move on so quickly after this whole, scene. I love Tommy, but I did wonder if he knew why Abby came and if Joel told him about the killings at the hospital. I felt like Tommy would have gone after Abby before Ellie instead of staying home. Not many people have family from before the outbreak, but he did, and he was taken by another non infected person, so that has to feel awful, and I feel like he would have wanted revenge on the people who killed him. I did love how we see how, as a kid, Joel always protected him from his abusive father. One storyline I think they should add is what Tommy was doing while everyone else was doing what they were doing, with Ellie and Dina, because Tommy is like low key a badass and, he's doing some cool stuff, but we just don't know what's going on, or at least we don't get to see it. But we know he's causing some damage. The show has great scenography, which is just like the overall design from the sets to the costume, props, and lighting. I love seeing Seattle and how it looks like Seattle, but a Seattle that has not been maintained. I'm not going to say what exactly, but there are some hints at stuff that will play a role later. So it's nice to see that they are already included in this season, even though you might miss it as just a show viewer. I love the costumes for the non-infected because they look like they are trying to blend in. Dark earth tones, nothing too bright. They also have visual cues that let you know which group people are a part of, like the scars have the symbol on their back, but also mostly are in these long raincoats, while the WLF looks like they stole from Fedra, so the outfits look more military. For the infected, they are wearing whatever they wore when they died, and it's obviously distress. The lighting is great because just because it is dark outside doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to see. Visually, the show is just stunning, and bravo to the team that is managing all of that. My favorite part of this season was the performances across the board. Everyone acted their butts off and pulled out some emotions throughout the season, but especially in the flashback episodes. While there are things I don't agree with story-wise, the acting was still very much a highlight of this season, and shout out to the casting team. The Last of Us Season 2 stumbles a bit, the pacing is off, and the story seems rushed, so I think it would have benefited from more episodes. The cast, however, is phenomenal and really keeps you invested in the show, and the scenography is great and will just have you in awe with how the show just looks. I'm interested to see what is to come and how they will handle Abby's part of the story. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.